Hello, welcome to Systems and Network Security class, and today is the first class and we'll be actually covering 5 modules, and each of the modules will be of different lengths. First module will be about why do we need security, what's the current landscape and context of cybersecurity for systems and networks, and then we'll talk about some of the attacks and what kind of cyber attacks are happening today, and then we'll talk about the syllabus and learning objectives, and in the middle we'll have a few modules of various topics of interest. So this class is actually about systems and network security. So this class is not about cryptography or encryption, decryption, and all that details, but we'll be using them. So at some point we'll be also talking a little bit about cryptography, but for the moment we'll focus on software, systems, and network security. So the first module of the lecture 0 is about introduction on context and landscape. First, I should acknowledge some of my colleagues from various universities from whose lectures I have borrowed some of the material, and also discussion with them have resulted in the slides. So obviously I need to acknowledge them. Now, what is the computer security problem? The computer security problem today is that there is a lot of software that is available for various purposes, in your phone, in your web browser, in your car, in the airplane, in manufacturing, and so on. And unfortunately, as much software there is, as many bugs there are, or more bugs there are, and therefore these bugs can be exploited. And also there are lots of gullible users, and these two are lethal combination, and therefore a lot of cybersecurity problems have arisen. Now, it's not always about software, sometimes it's in the hardware, and we'll come to that at some point. But let's now focus on software bugs and corresponding problems or vulnerabilities, as we call it. The second thing is that money can be made from finding and exploiting vulnerabilities. Now, and since money can be made, there is this problem that we see that the cyber criminals are interested in exploiting the various systems. And so there are 3 issues: that there are marketplaces for vulnerabilities. You can actually, if you find exploits in software, and if you know the vulnerabilities, you can actually sell those vulnerability information and corresponding exploits, and we'll discuss a little bit of that. Marketplace of own machines. So many of you have heard about botnets. So botnets actually are own machines, or what we call zombie machines, and these zombie machines are often used to launch attacks. And if you are an owner of a botnet, then you can actually make money by letting your botnet to be used for launching attacks, and we'll talk more about that. And then there are other methods for making profit from owned client machines. So people try to put malware in your system, or sometimes these malware are not manifesting themselves immediately, and they remain in the system as what we call advanced persistent threats. And the reason why they are there is that at the right time they will be used, these machines will be used as zombies or bots in a botnet. So that's the current state of computer security. Now, vulnerabilities, as I mentioned, that since we have a huge installed base of software, and software has lots of vulnerabilities, and then there are specific types of vulnerabilities. Some vulnerabilities are known, but they're not patched in all the systems, and therefore they can be exploited. But the most dangerous ones are the zero-day vulnerabilities, which basically means that the day the vulnerability is discovered by somebody or a group of people, they are let known to others, and then somebody comes up with an exploit, and before it is known to the system administrators all over the world, an exploit starts getting launched, and that makes a lot of problem, because this vulnerabilities and corresponding exploits cannot be even checked by antivirus or any kind of such signature-based defense mechanism. So here is a statistics that you can see that in 2013, total zero-day vulnerabilities was 23. In 2014, it was 24, and then in 2015, it was 54. So it's increasing. One of the reasons is obviously that we are getting more and more dependent on software, and there is a huge number of applications that we are dependent on. And the other issue is that the complexity of the software is increasing, and more criminals are getting interested in this, and therefore more activities you see. Now here is an interesting website that I would like all of you to actually look into. This website basically shows an animation, a real-time animation of various cyber hacking attempts in various countries in the world, and it's a very interesting map. Now another website I would like you to actually look into, which is the CVE database, or Computer Vulnerability and Exploits database, which is maintained by MITRE, which is a company in the US, and they actually maintain the database of various software vulnerabilities and corresponding exploits, the history, and whether it has been patched, and what kind of systems are affected by them, and so on. And this is a very important website to be to bookmark for this course, and also if you are interested in a career in cybersecurity. Now this particular graph from a semantic report basically shows what are the different places, or what are the different software that are whose vulnerabilities are exploited the most today. So as you can see that Android is 21%. So many of you use Android phone, and 21% of the vulnerabilities are in the Android phones, and they can be exploited. Another big one is obviously the browsers, and we are all using browsers, and we'll actually go into quite a bit of details about browser security in this class, but browsers are quite vulnerable, and they are the most used software. Even people who are not computer scientists are using browsers all the time. Now Office software, Microsoft Office, for example, they also make up a large percentage, 13%, and then Adobe Flash Player is a big one, Java, Adobe Reader, and so on, and there are a few others, which are percentage-wise too small to come up in this. Now in this graph, another one that we are seeing, now this is an interesting one, which is that ransomware is another type of exploit or malware. If you are affected by ransomware, your disk will be encrypted, and you won't be able to get access to your data, and if you don't have backup, then you are in trouble, and then you have to pay somebody who has encrypted your disk in terms of Bitcoin, for example, and to get this ransomware removed from your system. Now obviously various antivirus companies are working very hard on removing ransomware and recognizing the signature of ransomware, but they modify themselves. So this graph actually shows that in the first few ransomwares were modified only about 750 times, and then in August of 16, 15,484 times, and then in last few months it's been less. But what it shows is that if this thing changes itself, then the signature-based detection mechanisms will not work very well. Okay, so that's the ransomware, and this is actually showing the number of people that have been attacked by ransomware, and this statistics is not exact because this is from Kaspersky, and people who use Kaspersky antivirus on their system only are counted in this. So you don't get those people who have been attacked by ransomware and not using Kaspersky and using Symantec or McAfee or some other antivirus. This is not counted, but this kind of shows the trend that in July almost 400,000 people, and in September 334,000 people, in October 212,000 people, and so on. So this is almost endemic. And then this particular one shows that how many people are affected by financial malware, right? So this is a little bit different from ransomware. Here, banking Trojans, for example, is an example of a financial malware. So if they get into your system, they would be keylogging your system. So when you connect to your bank or something, they will actually report the keystrokes to their command and control center, and then your banking information will be vulnerable to criminals. So that's very large, and this is a little bit dated figure. Now we are showing mobile malware, and this is only for banking Trojans. So Trojans are malware that hides in your system but communicates back to some command and control center. And if you look at this one, you see that about within a year, 2013 November and October 2014, there is a huge increase from 1,500 to almost 13,000 banking Trojans that might be affecting your phones. And this is for mobiles, so mobiles, iPads, and so on. So if you're doing banking using mobiles, then this might actually be something you should be careful about. And then just to know that what percentage of mobile, what kind of mobile are being targeted by financial malware, just between, this is 2015 and this is 2016, and you can see the difference. The Android used to be only 8% of the financial malware in mobiles. Windows had the highest, larger percentage. Now you see that in 2016 until October, the numbers have increased to 36% of Android. So, and most people are using Android, so this is increasing. And the reason is obvious, that the incentive for criminals are increasing because more people are using Android-based devices for banking. So that's the end of the module 0.1. And in the next module, we'll talk about some sample attacks.
Today we have with us Professor Sandeep Shukla, who is our head of computer science department here at IIT Kanpur. Also, he is one of the leading researchers in the field of cybersecurity. Thank you, sir, for taking out your time for us.
Sure.
So we'll start with the first question. So can you please describe a bit about your field of expertise?
So my field of expertise has been quite evolving over time. So I started in formal verification and computational complexity theory in my PhD. And then I went to various jobs in the industry, worked on network management systems, and then worked on formal verification of Intel processor. From that, I went into VLSI, system level design, to embedded systems, to cyber physical systems, to cybersecurity. So right now I'm working mostly in cybersecurity, but I do some work in cyber physical systems and embedded systems.
So what are the major challenges in this field that are still unsolved?
Well, cybersecurity is a very difficult problem. So we are seeing that a lot of hacking is going on in various places, which has very far-reaching consequences. For example, only last week we had hacking in the French election, and actually it was very interesting that the French the campaign of the winning candidate actually got idea that there is hacking going on, and they actually created various kinds of ways to confuse the attackers and not give out the real information. We saw that happening in the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Party sites and so on. And then we are seeing the same kind of things happening in various other ways, like Ukraine had this attack on their power grid by Russians. So we had Turkish banking system into a standstill because of a denial of service attacks. We had ATM hacking in India, 3.2 million debit cards informations were hacked. And then we had issues with the IIT Delhi and various other sites being hijacked. Recently, the Russians Russian telecom actually hijacked the traffic of various financial services from the US. So this cybersecurity has become a real threat, which not only is disrupting the technology and intellectual property theft and so on. It has far-reaching consequences in people's lives and their financial situations, as well as their overall livelihoods and so on. So I think that cybersecurity is very, very big unsolved problem, because as we are getting more and more dependent on digital world, and everything in our life is dependent on computers and networks and communication, we have to solve this problem, and we don't know how to solve this problem in general. Now, if you look at individual issues like how do you secure your mobile, and how do you secure your desktop and your laptops, and how do you secure your server, or how do you secure your database where you have your other information, for example, we have to solve those problems also. But overall, I think that there has to be a very radical shift to how we prioritize our budgets for IT, and how do you prioritize our emphasis on what technology to invest in and so on. I think cybersecurity is going to make a huge difference, and if we cannot make that difference, then we are going to be suffering big time. So I think there is a huge amount of problems to be solved.
So, from the perspective of students, what do you think are the perks of studying computer science or specifically cybersecurity?
Well, studying computer science gives you a very interesting, experience, because you are actually doing things which you can immediately see having an effect, right? So you write a program to solve a particular problem, and then you can easily see the answers, and it gives you a very good pleasure of solving problems. In cybersecurity, the pleasure, in my opinion, is even more, because you are actually hacking into systems, and thereby you are actually exposing mistakes. So if you are a person who wants to do good, you can do a lot of good by hacking into systems and exposing the vulnerabilities or problems in the system, which could be used by cyber criminals to attack your system. On the other hand, if you are if you want to do harm to the system also, so it's a you can actually do that by doing cybersecurity, and that gives you a ability to actually decide between good and bad, and there will be a moral um, dilemma that you will have to solve. So it is an interesting experience from that point of view as well.
And it's illegal.
Yeah, and it's illegal to do it. So you better not do it. But that's some kind of a there is a dimension of moral issue and ethical issues there.
So, what are some of the career options in your field, say cybersecurity?
So in cybersecurity, the as I said before, that your systems are extremely vulnerable, and not only IT systems, but your power system, your banking system, and various other critical infrastructure. So the job in cybersecurity right now is very easily available. If you have the expertise, you can easily get a job, and very high paying job. Also, there is a huge lack of products and tools for cybersecurity. So if you can actually come up with good tools and products, you can actually build your own startup companies and so on. But also in terms of research, if you want to opt for a research career, there is a lot of interesting problems. For example, how do you detect that somebody is attacking your system by malware, right? So yeah, there are machine learning techniques people can use to actually detect malware. You may want to continuously monitor your system, and then use machine learning to figure out that the behavior of the system is not proper, or not as nominal behavior, and then you can from that create alerts. Those alerts will tell the system administrators to do something, that something strange is going on, an ongoing attack is going on. So if you are doing research in for example, critical infrastructure cybersecurity, then there are a lot of things that you do in terms of learning the electrical engineering components, and then you want to learn the cyber components, and then you have to figure out models that will bring these things together and then figure out what are the threats or how to model the threats. So I think that for all kind of tests, like if you have a more theoretical test, or if you have a taste of very hands-on work, cybersecurity provides you a whole range of possibilities, and it draws on your ability to do things at various. So if you're a full stack developer, what they call that, how to develop at the assembly level to all the way to the application level, about networking and operating system and middleware and so on, then that fun is there in cybersecurity, because you have to draw on knowledge, very deep knowledge in various aspects of the system.
So the last question, so can you please give us some suggestions for the students like who are very much beginners in the field of computer science?
Yeah, so computer science is a vast field. So you have to know first few years you basically have to take courses and understand where your interest lies. But if your interest is in pure mathematical aspects of computer science, then you actually can do well in there. But if you are more interested in solving real problems that confronts the industry or confronts society, then cybersecurity is a good area. There are other areas also. For example, machine learning is one area which is being used for both for marketing by marketing people, all the way to people who are doing demographic studies or various social indicator studies and so on. So all these areas have opportunities to contribute to the society. So my advice will be that you should look for opportunities to contribute to society in various ways. You could do you could do this by building tools and techniques that are useful, or you can build a company that gives jobs to people, or create products that can be exported to bring foreign currency to the country. You could do you can solve problems that the government is facing. But I think the end goal should be to somehow have some contribution that is beyond making money for yourself. I mean, obviously you will make money for yourself if you're in computer science and you do well, but you have to go beyond that and look for opportunities to uh, contribute. So, all right.
Thank you, sir, for taking out your time. I'm very sure that this will be very helpful for all of us. Thank you.
That's all.
Okay.
Welcome back. So we are now going to discuss module 0.2, which is I'm going to discuss a few sample attacks. So of course we are going to discuss these attacks and many other attacks in a lot more details during the course. But just to give you an idea in the first class, what kind of attacks can happen or are happening, we'll show you some of the examples. So I already discussed this, that there are a lot of buggy software, and there are a lot of gullible users, and therefore cyber criminals are making money out of this cyber attacks and various ways of exploiting their systems. Now, one of the major problem in the world today is that there are many hackers that are sitting there in various countries, mostly in Eastern Europe and Russia, who actually are maintaining a large number of botnets. And this, some of them actually have millions of zombie machines under their command and control. Now, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to own machines clandestinely? First of all, often need a variety of IP addresses when you are doing an attack or spamming people's email boxes. And actually this whole idea of botnet came from spamming. Like in late 90s and early 2000s, there used to be a lot of spam emails generated from these botnets. And since they have different IP addresses, it is often difficult for various spam blockers to figure out that they are actually coming from the same sources. And then bandwidth stealing is another reason, because if somebody owns your machine, then your machine's available bandwidth is being used by somebody else for launching attacks or sending spam emails and things like that. And the attacker's goal in many of these things is that you want to look like you are coming from different users or different machines, and therefore you want a variety of IP addresses, and infected machines or infected phones give you that kind of variety. Now, as I said, the spam, like Storm botnet, was one of the first few botnets that was used for spam. And if you look at the economics of spamming, it turns out that about 12 million pharmaceutical spams lead to one person actually buying that pharmaceutical. So therefore, you have to have very large number of spams if you want to actually make money. Similarly, out of 260,000 spam emails, one result in buying a greeting card or things like that. So denial of service, which is one of the major usage of botnets nowadays, where they launch a number of requests from various members of the botnet to a server, and the server then cannot handle so many requests in that small amount of time, and therefore it fails. So, and most recently, about 3 weeks ago, from December 2016, which was late in October and November, there was a big denial of service attack against the company called Dyn, which maintains one of the root DNS servers. And the way it was done was actually by using a particular botnet called Mirai, which was used on webcams and digital video recorders, which are not traditional computers. So you can see that denial of service attack and botnets are actually now moving into what we call Internet of Things. The economics of this is that for 1 hour of launching a huge number of requests on a website, for example, costs around $20, and 24 hours could cost anything around $100 or little more. So this is not very expensive. If somebody wants to attack your website, they can actually do it by using these services. And these services are available underground in the dark net, and we'll talk about that later in the course, but this is not very difficult to access. Now, click fraud is another reason for owning botnets, because sometimes various sites, if your advertisement is on that site and people click on that advertisement from your site, then you make money. So therefore, you actually want to make it look like that people are clicking on that advertisement from your site, and so this kind of botnets are also there. Second is to actually you want to own others' machine to actually install keyloggers or various other kind of Trojans so that you can actually steal their credentials, and you can inject ads. And this happens quite a bit nowadays, that if you are actually installing one of these malwares by mistake, then they will actually understand your geographical area and other things, and then start flashing ads on your web browsing, and it becomes really problematic. And also, if they actually put a keylogger on your machine, then your banking password could be easily stolen, and an example of that is the silent banker. So the way it works is that user requests a login page to the bank. So you type www.onlinesbi.com. Bank sends the login page needed to log in. Now this silent banker will then, what it will do is it will inject a JavaScript on the way, and then when you type in your banking credentials, it also goes to the attacker because of this JavaScript. Now this is not the only way, but there are many other ways to do this. So Zeus botnet is also using a very similar technique. The other issue is that sometimes we feel comfortable when we think that our machine is air-gapped, or our machine is not connected to the internet, and we think that it's okay, to be not so worried about security. But example of Stuxnet that actually attacked the nuclear enrichment plant in Iran in 2009 showed that actually in an isolated system also you can spread a malware, and in this case it was the Stuxnet worm, and that was actually sent to the plant by social engineering, and we'll talk a little bit about social engineering later, but this is a way of influencing people to carry an attack vector into a place which is air gapped, so you don't have connection by internet, but within the plant there is a network, because they use SCADA system, so they have a network, and so this network was affected. The worm replicated itself to various machines, and then eventually changed the SCADA control, and the centrifuge rotation speed was decreased to below critical speed, and therefore the uranium was not getting enriched. And these kind of attacks are very difficult to find until it is too late, because apparently nothing changes. In a distributed denial of service attack or other kinds of attacks, effect is immediate, but in this case the effect is kind of delayed, and this is that's why it's a clandestine covert attack. And this used Windows vulnerabilities as well as Siemens PCS7 SCADA control software vulnerability. So it was quite a clever attack. And this actually, Stuxnet actually made the entire world sit up and take notice that our critical systems like nuclear power generators, thermal power generators, hydro power generators, manufacturing control, your transmission and distribution system, all these things are vulnerable to this kind of attacks, and this kind of led to a lot of attention in the United States, and President Obama in 2013 gave an executive order to create a cybersecurity framework for critical infrastructure, and we'll come to that at some other point. There are server-side attacks. Now, mostly this is done for financial data theft or critical information theft. So one example is target attack. So in 2013, 140 million credit card informations were stolen. And I will discuss the pathology of this attack in much more details later, because this is a very interesting story that this attack was launched through a very unrelated network. It was the HVAC, or the air conditioning system was being monitored by another company in the stores of Target, and that network was not a very critical network, so it was not so properly guarded, and so attackers breached that network, and from that it basically went into the information network inside the store, which connected all the point of sale machines, which uploaded the credit card information onto the servers, and it's a very interesting story, but we'll get into that later. So there is Project Aurora, that was apparently the Chinese attack on power systems in the United States, or at least suspected so. The Facebook attack on Facebook, GitHub, and so on are all examples of server attacks. And one of the way these server-side attacks happen is by, or one of the reasons why server-side attacks happen is obviously stealing information. Another is to actually make legitimate websites carrier of malware, and when the legitimate users come to that website, they actually get infected by what is called a drive-by download. So they come to this website, which is a regular website, and if it is infected by the malware, then they also download that malware on their system. So another problem in cybersecurity today is insider attacks. So Pricewaterhouse did a survey 2 years ago, and then turns out that 29% of the attacks are by some insider. An insider could be disgruntled employee, or it could be somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, and therefore it might be a problem. So here is an example of an insider attack. In this case, what happened is that the Linux kernel that was being maintained in two CVS or software repositories, in one repository somebody changed the code of this particular function called wait4 function, and in this function what they did is they added this line here. Now what this line does seems to be that they are checking some kind of guard conditions, and it seems to be quite innocuous. But if you look at this one, this here is using an equality sign and not equal. So it's not actually checking whether that thing is equal to 0, but it's actually assigning 0 to the current user ID. So as soon as this line is executed, the program that called this wait4 will be now executing in the privilege mode or as root. So this was hidden in the software repository, but fortunately the person who was supposed to merge the code noticed this and corrected this. But this can happen in your software development environment in your company. So another example, of course, is that Snowden. So many of you might have seen the movie Snowden. So he had access to the secure network inside the Defense Department, and then he brought a CD, read-write CD, which he apparently claimed to be a music CD, and then he was downloading a lot of cable information, and actually this is not Snowden. This was the other guy who actually started giving information to WikiLeaks, and that's an insider attack example, of course. There was a system administrator in the city of San Francisco government who got upset and changed the root password and refused to give the root password to anybody. So the functioning of the city was compromised. And then there was this example of, so UBS is a bank, and in this bank, one of the employee was supposed to get a $50,000 bonus, but he only got $36,000. So he got very upset. So he put a logic bomb. So what a logic bomb does is that it is timed. So he basically designed the code and inserted into the system so that this code would actually delete all the important files, not only in the local server but also in 400 different branches of the company. But unfortunately, he was caught, and he was given 97 months of prison time. But so these examples show that people who have the password and other kind of access control into your system, your security system should be such that even they cannot do too much harm, right? I mean, that's the way it should be designed. So because something is password protected or authorized doesn't mean that it is secure. It may not be secure from the insider attacks. And we'll go into more details of insider attack issues later. So that's the end of 0.2 module, and in the next module we'll talk about the marketplace for vulnerabilities. We hinted at that before, so we'll talk more about that. All right, so now we are in module 0.3. Now I want to take about 5 minutes in this module to familiarize you with the marketplace for vulnerabilities. So what marketplace for vulnerabilities mean is that where you can go and buy vulnerability information and exploits, and this is actually very important to understand, because a lot of people seem to think that if you don't have a lot of knowledge in software and a lot of knowledge about systems and web browser and web server and so on, you cannot attack systems. And what this information will show you is that you really don't need to know all that stuff. You can actually buy all that. So it turns out that there are websites, even regular websites like hackzone.ru, for example, where you can go and buy information. But in this case, you are not buying vulnerability or exploit, but you are buying more the product of hacking, right? So in this case, for example, you can buy credit card information and with the credit card username and account number, expiration date, and the extra information that is required to use those credit card. And people actually go and buy these. But what is more interesting is that since you can, by finding bugs, not all bugs are security bugs, but by finding security bugs, you can actually make money. Now, there are 3 ways to make money from bugs in software. So first is a good one, which is you basically, people who do that are called white hat hackers, because they are doing it for good. and different companies, big companies, they have what is called a bug bounty program. So if you find a vulnerability in one of their products, and if you report it, then depending on the vulnerability and its the risk that it poses, you will get various amounts of money. So for example, in Google vulnerability reward program, you can make up to $100,000. Microsoft, similar, $100,000. Mozilla bug bounty program is a little less, so $500 to $3,000. And then some other competitions, there are competitions where you can make money. So this is actually a good place for white hat hackers. And many times, you become a member of a Hall of Fame that they put out on their websites and so on, so this is good. Then there is this various services that actually collect this vulnerability information and actually might actually pay, and they are also for good purposes. They would actually inform the company, so that the patch can be released and so on. And then third is, which is a bad one, which is the black market. So black market is where you go and sell vulnerability that you found, right? So if you find Adobe Reader vulnerability, apparently according to Andy Greenberg of Forbes, in 2012 the rate was from 5,000 to 30,000. So Windows vulnerabilities were going for 60 to 120,000. iOS was going from 100 to 250,000. And in these cases, what you do is, and you don't tell the manufacturer or the software company that whose product is being affected by this, but rather you actually sell it in the black market, which is bad because then somebody is going to exploit it, and it might come out as a zero-day exploit and things like that. But people are making money, and when there is money, there are enough people to do it. Now, we already talked about botnets. So people who own botnets could actually also use the botnet for something called a pay per install service or PPI service. So what they do is that they will advertise that if you want a particular exploit or a particular payload to be installed in some other people's machine, they can do it. And if you can somehow install that exploit in those people's machine, then you can actually bring information to yourself. Like, for example, if you install keylogger, you can get their banking information. And these service providers, they own these machines, and they will negotiate with you the price, and then they will take your code, and then they will install your code onto these machines that they own, and then they will charge you. And in 2011, in a conference, these authors, they actually posed as buyers of this service, and they found the prices at that time. So in 2011, the prices were, if you are, the going prices were between $100 to $180 for infecting 1,000 machines in US, and in Asia the rate was $7 to $8 per 1,000 machine. But this might have changed, but you get the idea about how this botnet owners are making money. And this is done, all this negotiation and all this marketplace is actually in the dark net or in the deep web, where you have to get access to various different means like Tor, browser, and so on. So that's the end of module 0.3. So you learned something about the marketplace, and now you can argue with somebody who says that you need very spatial knowledge and technically savvy people to attack your system. And from this information, it's clear that that's not necessarily the case. All right, so welcome to module 0.4. In this module, we'll talk about what is computer security. So far we have been hearing that there are bugs in software that can be exploited, and when bugs are exploited, they can result in various kinds of losses, and that's what we understood as computer security so far. And we saw that these vulnerabilities and exploits can be easily purchased. But there is more to computer security than that, because computer security is not only about software vulnerabilities and exploits. It has more important aspects, and a computer system is actually not just software. It has operating system, it has firmware, it is connected to the network, and so on. So we have to generalize the idea of computer security. And here that's what we are going to do. So before I go into the kind of definition of software security, let's recall Ken Thompson's clever Trojan. So Ken Thompson is one of the inventors of the C language, and he also invented, he's one of the co-inventors of Unix. And he actually, many years ago, he said that he created a version of a C compiler, and in that compiler he did something so that whenever this C compiler compiles the login program, it will automatically insert a Trojan, a backdoor in the login program. And not only that, whenever his compiler is recompiled, it will recognize that it is the compiler that is being recompiled, and it will actually add that piece of code that adds this backdoor to the compilation of login program. So he said that it is that easy to create a backdoor in programs. But that aside, what exactly is security? So security is achieving something in the presence of adversaries. So when you talk about physical security, you think about, somebody might attack your building, somebody might steal stuff in your building, and so on. So therefore you put guards, or you put locks and things like that. So it is always an adversary that you imagine in order to actually put security in place. So internet is full of adversaries, because there are people who are always trying to attack your system. They're always trying to make money out of your vulnerabilities. So in the presence of these adversaries, you have to design your system so that it is not possible to attack by these adversaries. And as we discussed before in the Stuxnet context, that even things which are not connected to the internet, like air-gapped systems, even there are insider adversaries, for example, and there could be other adversaries, which are created to be adversary by other adversaries. And so any designer of system nowadays has to worry about security because of these. Now, what is the main plan for designing a security-centric system? So in the early days, if you look at the internet, for example, or if you look at Unix, they are not designed to be secure because the adversarial model was not thought about. And then later on, we think about adding security to these systems. But new systems that we have to design, we have to worry about making security as one of the major concerns of the design. So first thing that we think about in security is policy. So what is policy? Policy basically defines what is permissible and what is not permissible. So for example, you might say that the shadow file or the encrypted password file should not be accessible to anybody other than the system administrator. So you can say that so only X, where X is the system administrator, can access file F, and nobody else should be able to access file F. That could be your policy. Then your goals, and normally there are three major goals in security. One is confidentiality, which is what this policy talks about, that only X can access file F, and it should be confidential. But integrity is also important, because it should not be that this file is mangled or this file has some information changed in it, then the integrity is violated. So that should not be obviously the case. And then availability. So if this file is important for the system to function, then nobody should be able to do something to deny access to this file for forever. So that's these three things, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, are the major tenets of cybersecurity. Now then we have to worry about a threat model, because when we design the policy, we think about what should or should not be done, but threat models say that how that policy can be breached and in what different ways. And this is a difficult task. Threat modeling is one of the major problems in cybersecurity, because you may not think about a particular way of attacking the system. For example, can Y physically grab this file server and run, right? So that could be a threat model, and then how to prevent that. That will come in physical security space, but still you have to worry about those things. Then mechanisms are the knobs that you can control so that you can make the security policy hold. So you can actually make that file only having a particular read access to this file and things like that. So you have to worry about that. And the resulting goal is that no way an adversary should get access to that file. So in this case, or no way an adversary using that particular threat model could violate the policy. So that's basically the high-level plan of security. So the question is, why is security hard? I mean, we are hearing all the time that cybersecurity problems are happening all over the world. One of the reasons is that guaranteeing a policy, assuming threat models, is a difficult problem. Because without the threat model, it doesn't, your security is not foolproof, but the threat models are difficult to imagine. Not all threat models can be easily imagined. And realistic threat models are open-ended, so they are what we call negative models. So instead of saying that this should happen, we usually say that this should not happen. And normally it's easier to check positive goals, like if you want to check if X has access to this file, it's easier to check. But Y doesn't have access to the file is harder to check, because there may be 1,000 different ways that Y might have an access to the file. And weakest link matters. So you may not know, you may not have full idea about what are the weakest links in your system. For example, I said in an earlier module that target point-of-sale machines were attacked through another network, which was their HVAC monitoring network, which was their weakest link because they didn't think of securing that network very well. So designing a secure system is an iterative process. So you have to design, update threat models as necessary, assess the vulnerabilities. Assessment of vulnerability is a big part of cybersecurity, like monitoring and assessing all the time, continuously, and then accordingly, change your system, update your system is very important. Now, this next question is, and this is, I'm often asked this question, like, no system is perfectly secure, so why worry about it, right? So that's a very pessimistic idea, because you have to give your best effort. You have to, because every system has certain breaking points, and every system has some weird threat model which will actually compromise it. But you have to do what you can do to best protect your system, protect your data, and protect the functioning and integrity of your system. And you have to keep doing this continuously. So you have to do penetration testing, and we'll talk more about penetration testing in the course. But penetration testing is a way to actually make cyber attacks yourself, to make sure that those attacks are not successful. If they're successful, then you have to fix the system. And other thing is that risk-based security model, that you have to look at what are the risks, and risks are usually the probability times the effect that particular breach would have. And higher the risk, more resources should be put in securing that part of the system. But on the other hand, you have to be worried about the weakest link. So your question is, how do you do risk modeling, and how do you do enforcing security on high risk components of your system, and accordingly design your system. Manual auditing often helps. So you have to keep doing this automated testing, like penetration testing and so on. But you also have to fall back on manual auditing, manual code revision, and manual system revision, and so on, so that you can actually be a little more comfortable about the security of your system. And then finally, you have to make the cost of attack high. So deterrence mechanisms have to be there, either by law. So you can make your law very, very strict, so that any cyber attacker, if caught, should be given exemplary punishment. But usually that doesn't work very well. So technologically, you have to make it very expensive, which means that your system should be so fortified that the other attacker would not be able to do this with low cost. So it should be very expensive for them to actually get access to your system, and we'll discuss that later. Now, why policy matters in security? So we'll give you some examples of how policy affects security. So here is an example. So Sarah Palin was actually one of the vice presidential candidate in the US in 2008 election, and what happened then is that her Yahoo account, she was using Yahoo email, and her Yahoo account username password was compromised, and people started leaking her emails. So the reason why it happened is because Yahoo had a password policy that was not very secure, or that was not secured properly. So for example, if you forget your password, and Yahoo has since changed this, so you cannot try this here now, but if a user forgets the password, you can reset the password by answering security questions. Now, what is a security question? Usually they ask you which city you were born, or what is your mother's maiden name, and things like that. Now, for a famous person like Palin, who was a governor of a state and so on, it was easy to actually get that information on the internet, and that's what the attacker did. And then the email was, the password and so on was breached. Now here, the policy was wrong. The policy should have had a two-factor authentication, right? So at least it should also use, other than this information, it should have an extra information like Palin's phone number, and then some information should be validated through her phone or SMS and things like that, which, by the way, is not very secure now, but at that time that was quite secure. So that was a policy mistake by Yahoo, and since then it has been fixed. But there is another example, which is interaction of multiple companies' policies that led to a breach. So Matt Honan is a writer of the Wired magazine, which is actually writes a lot about security, and his Amazon, Apple, and Google accounts were hacked at the same time, and by the interaction of policies of these three different companies. So what happened is that Matt Honan's Gmail password was first, the attackers tried to breach the Gmail password. So what it does is that at that time Gmail's policy was to do password reset was to send a verification link to a backup email. And Google, when you go and type in Matt Honan's username, and that was guessed, and then Google helpfully prints out the part of the backup email address. So in this case, not the full email address, but part. And in this case, Matt Honan's backup was at me.com email address, which is an Apple account. So the attacker goes to the Apple password reset policy, and he sees that it requires a billing address and last 4 digits of a credit card. Now, how do you know Matt Honan's credit card? Billing address is easy to guess on the internet because he's a famous person. So how do you get the last 4 digits of the credit card? So the attacker goes to his Amazon account, guesses the username, and Amazon at that time would allow you to add a credit card to your account without typing in your password. So you just say, I want to add a credit card to my account, and Amazon was happy to add that credit card. Unfortunately, this actually led to the problem because Amazon's password reset policy was that if you have forgotten your password, you give a credit card number that is on your account and it will let you reset the password. Now in this case, the attacker actually put in a new credit card information for Matt Honan, and then he goes to the password reset, and the password reset says, give me a credit card number that is on your account, and the attacker obviously knows that. So attacker then puts the credit card, and then he gets the gets to reset the Amazon account. And Amazon account, by getting into the Amazon account, he gets the last 4 digits of an existing credit card that was not the attacker's credit card, but Matt Honan's real credit card. He uses that to go to Google to actually reset the Apple password, and the Apple password then he gets the link that the Gmail sent and changes the Google password, and that way Matt Honan was locked out of all his accounts. So here, interaction of policies actually made this mess, and therefore Since then, all this have changed, but this is how difficult it is to actually imagine the policies that would be foolproof to all these different kinds of threat models. So what we can do is we can think hard about the implications of policy statements. Now there are tools, formal methods-based tools that can actually model the policies in a formal way, in a mathematical way, and try to see if their interactions will lead to some problems. And it's often difficult for large, complex distributed systems that we normally see today. So this is one issue. Now, so I have already mentioned that you have to have threat models and assumptions that you use to actually make your security controls. But many times the threat models and assumptions also can be wrong if you are not thinking properly. One of the things is that human factors are not accounted for in the threat model. So for example, RSA, the security company, as well as Sony, which was hacked a couple of years ago, by apparently North Korean hackers. In all these cases, the company executives got email with phishing links, so links that if you click on them, they will download malware, and that malware basically will attack your system. So you would think that most reasonable people in your company will not click on a link sent through email from unknown sources, but it's not difficult to fake an sender of an email and so on. So it's very difficult to imagine that people will be always on their guard to not click on links and so on. Another is computational assumptions change over time. For example, Kerberos, which is an authentication system that used 56-bit DES keys in mid-80s, but in those days it was very difficult to get it cracked, but now with very simple computation you can crack a 56-bit DES. So obviously they had to change that. SSL certificates, the certificates that are when you do HTTPS based web browsing, normally the server will present you with a certificate, and then you have to verify that that certificate is authentic, and that certificate also sends the with it comes the public key and so on, and we'll talk about that more later, what it means to be public key and what it means to be digital certificate. But most of the times this is something that we trust. Whenever we get a certificate, we trust the certificate, and it turns out that there have been many cases where fake certificates were used to make the browser feel secure and go to a server and then get drive-by download and so on. So in case you assume that your hardware is trustworthy. So many times you think that, okay, the software may be attacked, it has vulnerability, but your hardware is trustworthy, and that is not necessarily the case. For example, many of the chips that we use in our systems are actually manufactured in other countries, and there could be Trojans and there could be other kinds of problems. Plus, if you have a very, very strong adversary like NSA, the National Security Agency in the US, then anything is possible. Another is that random number generation is often compromised, and we saw some examples of that, many times the random number generation is compromised by mistake, by not changing the seed of the random number generation. So it's not good to assume always that the random number generation is safe. You might actually need to check whether it's random enough to actually trust. Assuming that the operating system is secure, that is also another assumption that can go wrong. The operating system might have backdoors, might have Trojans, it may have vulnerabilities, and the machine disconnected from the network, and that assumption of secure, that you are secure, that since your machine is disconnected, is not also correct, as we saw in the case of Stuxnet worm. So how do you avoid limitations in threat models? So what you have to do is that you have to be very, very astute about making your threat models, formalize them, and then make them as general and as simple as possible. And these things may not make much sense at this point in the course, but as we'll see later, it will start making more sense what it means to be a general threat model than a very specific threat model. And and better the design, the better, more and less reliance on the assumptions, better and more robust is your design. So you have to see that you can actually do some other methods. For example, nowadays people are talking about blockchain-based methods instead of digital certificate-based methods for authentication. So reliance on fully trustworthy institutes may not be a good idea nowadays. And the mechanisms that we put in for security, as I said, that after we make the policies and we understand the threat models, we put some what we call security controls. So security controls or mechanisms are the ways in which you change various parameters and add additional system components like firewalls and antivirus checkers or intrusion detection components and so on. These mechanisms are good, but sometimes they themselves are not necessarily the rescuers, because sometimes they actually have bugs themselves. So if you have a software component like IDS or a firewall or anything, what if they have bugs and they have vulnerabilities that can be exploited? And it has happened. The firewalls have been exploited in the past. If the application, so where you put your security, you can put your security at the network interface, you can put your security at the hardware or at the operating system or at the application level. If the application itself is responsible for the security of the information that the application uses or collects, then application level vulnerabilities might be the problem. So one example here is that Apple's iCloud password was compromised for some celebrities, and some pictures were compromised. And the way this happened was very interesting, because iCloud's password, if you try, after 4 times it locks you out, right? So you cannot try random passwords and succeed. But Apple had this another application for Find My iPhone. So that application, whoever designed it forgot to put that password guessing limit. So what happened there is that you can do unlimited number of guesses in that application. Now you are using your Apple ID and password, but you have 2 different authentication interfaces, one for iCloud, which was designed properly, one for Find My iPhone application, which was not designed properly. So the people that attacked the iCloud password somehow found that vulnerability in the other application and actually found the password of some celebrities and then got into their iCloud accounts and released their photos and so on. And the main issue here is that you should have one authentication interface for all your applications, but Apple did not do that. Now they have fixed it, but then at that time the other interface was designed separately, and there was a mistake. There was Citigroup's credit card website also had some access control check problems. So they had this breach some years ago in 2011, and then Android's Java secure random method actually had this weakness that they were not really random. The seed was not changing. So if you keep random number generation in a cycle, you will actually, after a while, you will be guessing what random numbers will be generated, and that led to Bitcoin theft a couple of years ago. So mechanisms themselves could be problems. If the mechanisms are not designed properly, they could be actually leading to vulnerabilities. So some of the implementation bugs that we normally see a lot, and in this class we'll talk a lot about it, is buffer overflow. So that's one of the most common one, and in the next few lectures you will actually get to know a lot about it. Use after free, which is dereferencing a pointer or something after it has been deallocated. Double free, trying to deallocate some structure which is already deallocated. decrementing a stack pointer past the end of a stack, which could lead to memory corruption. And then things like command injection, SQL injection, these are some of the implementation bugs. So earlier we were talking about policy problems, we were talking about various kinds of problems with the design of the controls, but here we are talking about implementation problems. So we'll see that there are differences between architectural vulnerabilities and design vulnerabilities and implementation vulnerabilities, and we'll look at some each of these. So that basically takes us to the last module of lecture 0, and in this we'll talk about the learning objectives of this class, because until now we were just giving you a context, landscape, and various initial information to familiarize you regarding various jargons in software and network security. But in this one, we'll tell you what exactly you are expected to learn by taking this class. So now we are on to the last module of this lecture, so module 0.5, and here we are just going to discuss the learning objectives of this course. So in this course, we have 5 parts, and the first 3 parts we are going to cover in quite a bit of depth, and the last 2 parts are we are going to touch on towards the end of the course. So first part is about basics of security. So how do you secure applications, operating system, legacy code, and various access control mechanisms, isolation, authentication, and things like that. Then we'll go into web security, and as we saw that 50% or more of the problems are in the web, so it's an important part, and we'll be talking about how to build robust websites and understand the browser security model and how browser security could be actually affected by various exploits. Then in part 3 we'll talk about network security. So how do you defend against network attackers? So monitoring and architecting secure networks, and talking about networks standards and so on. Part 4 will be on mobile security. So we saw that 21% in 2016 were Android compromises. So we'll talk about that, but since this is limited time course, so we will not get into too much details. And finally, as time permits, we'll talk about the infrastructure security, like power system and manufacturing system security, so security of industrial systems. So that's the main content. And we talked about what is security. It's designing systems in the presence of adversaries. And so with that in mind, let's talk about major learning objectives. So major learning objectives are basically the things that you are supposed to know or learn at the end of any course. This is the major learning objectives are the stuff that you are supposed to learn and know at the end of the course. So first major learning objective is to discover software bugs that pose cybersecurity threats. So given a software in C or in Python or any other language, what to look for and where to how to test the software for finding security vulnerabilities. And then you should be able to explain and recreate exploits of such bugs and create cyber attacks by exploiting those vulnerabilities, given that your software has that. And then you have to also explain how to fix those bugs to mitigate those threats. So this is the software application bugs. Now, second major learning objective here is on the web browsers and web servers. So how to discover cyber attack scenarios to web browsers and web servers, and explain various possible exploits. And for that you have to understand the web security models, recreate cyber attack on browsers and servers with existing bugs, and explain how to mitigate such threats and implement them. The third objective is to discover and explain cybersecurity holes in standard networking protocols like TCP, IP, ARP, DNS, BGP, Ethernet, all these were not designed with cybersecurity in mind. These are designed much before cybersecurity was a big issue, and therefore you have to study this network architecture and standard protocols and see where the vulnerabilities lie. And then you have to explain the mitigation methods and revisions of standards. Now IPv6 is there, and various new versions of DNS, DNSSEC and BGP-SEC and so on. These new protocols have cybersecurity in mind, so you have to be able to explain how they are taking care of cyber threats. Number 4 is to discover and explain mobile software bugs posing cybersecurity threats to mobile applications, and explain and recreate exploits, and explain mitigation techniques. So this will be a little bit superficial in this class, because first 3 components will actually take majority of the time. Finally, articulate the urgent need for cybersecurity in critical computer systems. So as I said, that the industrial critical systems and power systems and so on, they are vulnerable to cyber attacks, but there is a separate course for that. In this course, we will not be able to go into much details, but we should be able to explain or discuss enough so that you can explain where the vulnerabilities could be and what can be done and things like that. Explain the threat scenarios at the end of this class. Number 6 is at the end of this class, you should be able to articulate the well-known cyber attack incident. So when you actually read about a cybersecurity incident and read the post-mortem analysis, you should have enough knowledge at the end of this class to actually explain it to the others and explain what mitigation techniques could have avoided this and things like that. So that's the overall knowledge that you would gain from this class. And number 7 is they explain the difference between systems cybersecurity versus network cybersecurity, cryptography, crypto protocols, and so on, because these are often confused by people as something same or they are the equivalent of each other, but they are not. And therefore you have to, if you have taken a course like this, you should have very clear idea about what these are and how they differ from each other and where are they applicable and things like that. So with that, the lecture number 0 is over. So we'll have lecture number 1, where we'll start looking at real technical issues in cybersecurity.
Right now what I'm doing is creating a kind of Trojan file, android.apk file. This is the APK file that will be distributed all over the internet. And the person whosoever is downloading this APK file, his mobile phone will be hacked easily. They are always binded with some kind of other games like Candy Crush, Mini Militia, Clash of Clans. You may never know that that particular file can contain a backdoor inside that. And just see what will happen. I need to hack Android, so Android will payload 192.168.0.102. So you are installing the file that I have created. So it is Android 6.0.1. Okay, I can take photos from your camera without your knowledge. Webcam _list. No light was there, no sound was there. So it is a kind of a spy cam. Snap _2. So this is you over here. Call logs. I'm dumping the call logs over here. You Farzine, incoming call was there. So you can see I'm accessing everything that is inside your mobile phone. There is an option of record _mic. So this mic can automatically be hacked by the attacker and he can listen to what I am speaking in the background. 2119 SMSs in this phone, and that SMS may contain what? OTPs of your bank accounts or Gmail account or any account. You can see here is the SMS dump. So you got an incoming SMS, driver name Sunil, mobile number this, it was tapped. Your bank account number, okay, the last digit is 4663261. So these are all your details that can be taken out from your mobile phone.
What about this internet thing? Do you know anything about that?
It is the big new thing.
The internet is growing like an embryonic brain at a rate of 10% a month.
By the end of the 90s, many of us were happy slaves to our computers.
Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone.
This morning, the FBI is investigating the photo hacking that targeted Hollywood celebrities.
iCloud came under instant scrutiny.
And now there's a new form of cyber matchmaking, college networking websites, the Facebook.com.
There are more internet users in India than the United States.
Close to 30 lakh debit cards are understood that are suspected to have exposed card and PIN details to malware at the back end.
Everything's in the internet, everything's in computers, and we're going to lose it all.
People were terrified the world was going to end.
The entire government system and corporate system is really under threat and underprepared for this kind of cybercrime, Pauline.
Yes, your computer is at risk because at least 150 countries, scores of multinational companies and more than 2 lakh people have fallen prey to this massive cyber attack dubbed as WannaCry ransomware.
It is something like a kind of crypto locker. It will not harm your computer, but it will encrypt each and every data inside the computer. And if it is encrypted, it will ask for a decryption password. And to decrypt, you will need a key. And that key will be generated only when you will pay a particular amount of money into a Bitcoin address. Okay, Bitcoin is a kind of virtual money. So that is why it's called as ransomware. In Darknet, one guy was there, he was providing ransomware for free. So at that time, I registered myself over there and I purchased the code through which I can make the ransomware. Near about when I was in 12th class, I started hacking. I bypassed the firewall of our school so that we can open anything inside our school internet connection. I made phishing pages for many websites. Phishing means a kind of duplicate page that asks for the login and all different things. For each and everything I used to get money, and the charges varied from 10,000 to 1 lakh. It was never intended to go inside black hat hacking. I was just interested in hacking. Since there was no, you can say, exposure, that's why I was doing black hat hacking, just for my pocket money, and that's all. The more and more things that you will connect to the internet, the more will be the vulnerability over there. So if you are connected to the internet 24/7, that means you are under attack 24/7. Because for hackers, they just need a medium to attack, and internet is the best medium to attack someone.
There are only two kinds of people in the world. One who know that they have been hacked, and the others who are vomiting information about their personal, professional, social lives on the internet.
Few years back, there was not a single person, not a single company over here in India who is demanding for hackers. But nowadays, the demand of hackers are increasing. Why? IoT is coming everywhere, Internet of Things and all.
Internet of Things is basically the idea that all the gadgets that you have, including your washing machine, your smart TV, for example, your satellite receiver, all these things nowadays are capable of running software. So now, why not make a network of these things so that from one you can control the other, and also they can cooperate with each other. So for example, if a phone rings, your TV volume might automatically reduce because they are talking to each other. You might from your phone want to turn on your AC before 15 minutes before you reach home. So these are the things that people are thinking in terms of use cases. The problem with this is that by creating this connection and connectivity, vulnerability in one can propagate to other devices, and therefore it can take over your entire system.
IoTs are generally hacked by using MITM attacks only. You also will not come to know that you are being spied by your own TV.
Leaked documents about the CIA's technical capability to carry out hacking into electronic devices. Things like Android phones, iPhones, even in one interesting document, Samsung smart TVs, so it can make it look like the TV is off when in fact it's on, and actually collecting audio from the room and sending it back.
And your TV is just a single point inside the complete network, a single node. Okay, there can be 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, there can be many televisions all over the world. So what they can do, they can be used to attack onto a particular target. That is called DDoS. Okay, distributed denial of service attack.
The new tactic was carried out by hackers using a virus to take control of millions of personal devices connected to the internet, like home routers, DVRs, baby monitors, and security cameras, without their owner's knowledge.
This is happening every day. And if you look at the crime statistics in India, cyber crime statistics, and these are reported crimes, so a lot of things don't get reported. In 2011, it was about 14,000. And in 2015, it was about 3 lakhs.
I think on the 26th is my father's birthday, so we went out, bought a couple of things with my debit card, and by the time we came back, I saw 2 transactions that happened from my debit card. So I quickly alerted my father and we kind of hotlisted the debit card, wanted to get a refund, so initiated the process with the bank, for which they wanted a police complaint. The new debit card came in about a week, and I think I used it just 2-3 places again when I had another transaction that happened on the second debit card. I think it was an Indonesian transaction for the amount of like 1 lakh. And so the bank called me to ask if I made that transaction. So I had to hotlist the second debit card, get the third debit card. So I was pretty sure the first one is cloned. Just because of the nature of scam. It's kind of like the elaborate schemes of scamming people with mind play. So they would come around and they would say, oh, it's demonetization, right? Why would you use cash? Everyone should use their cards. So I think after I used my card, they probably went in there and they cloned it.
You go to a website and you can actually be redirected to a similar looking website, your banking website. You type in your password and all that. And then you basically are not really typing to your bank, but you're typing it to the hacker's server.
If I open phishing page of Facebook, here you can see, what is this? The real Facebook page. It looks totally similar. I will give my original username and original password right now over here. Now just, if I'll close this thing, this is my username. After that, this is my password. So if I host this particular page onto a server and I send it to the victim through email or anything like that, he will get the login over there. He will think that everything was fine, but it is not actually fine. Your username and password is already stolen right now. Everybody is having an online banking account, but at the time of login, when you give a username and the password, just beside the password box, there is an option of virtual keyboard, means on-screen keyboard. But 99.99% people, they do not use it. They use just their physical keyboard. That's the mistake that we make use of, and we get the keystrokes. That is called keylogging.
Eventually they told me it would be best if you kind of keep your debit cards not on any online platform, so get them off Paytm, Uber, Amazon. For the second one, on the other hand, I have no idea, like how did a card that was used just on 2 apps, 5 days old, get hacked so quickly? So that kind of put a spanner in the works in my thinking. My first gut feeling was someone's in my phone.
Your username and password is transferred from your laptop to the router and from router to the server, and then it is get authenticated and you get the connection back to you. Just imagine, in place of router, if an attacker is sitting over there, you go to public places, there are public chargers over there. You might be knowing that USB cables are used for 2 things, for data transfer and for charging. It's very easy to make a charger that can easily copy your data from your mobile phones.
Somebody asks you to give your phone for an emergency call on the bus stop or someplace, and then in 30 seconds he can actually download an APK file, and then you can get compromised.
We cannot hack anyone until and unless you will give me the permission to hack yourself. That is the main thing. That is called social engineering. So right now you can see over here the username of internet banking, the password of internet banking, the name, the address, home phone number, mobile phone number I was not able to capture, email ID, email password is also given over here, account number, card number, expiry date, CVV number, ATM pin, SSN number, date of birth, and security questions along with answers. So if you are having these much details along with you, you can do any kind of online fraud by using this card. And not only this card is there with me, there are more than 300 cards with me right now.
I think the bank was doing whatever technology they have, but I think beyond that, they have no way of cracking if the two cases are connected, right? They have no way of telling if my debit card is being compromised on a Paytm. So I think they're not technically capable to fix a problem. They're technically capable to, I think, just find data and maybe hope that it kind of shows a pattern.
I think India as a nation doesn't have a plan in place for dealing with cybercrime. When we enacted the Information Technology Act, it was a kind of a jack of all trades law. So we put in a chapter to deal with cybercrimes. The 2000 legislation was effective because it had made a number of cybercrimes as non-bailable offences. But in 2008, when India amended its cyber law, it made a historical mistake. It made, barring a few cybercrimes, almost all cybercrimes as bailable offences. But that was 2008. Today in 2017, you quickly realize that the Indian IT Act is thoroughly outdated. India does not have dedicated laws to deal with the digital payments. India also does not have a law on cyber security or a dedicated legislation on privacy and data protection. So in a scenario like this, where increasingly Indians want to come on to the digital bandwagon, it's imperative that legal frameworks must not only provide for appropriate consumer protection, but also provide for the cyber security of the entire ecosystem and its constituents. In a country where underreporting of cybercrime is a de facto norm, this is only adding further trouble for the challenges that the law enforcement agencies are facing. A few years back, we did a survey and we found out that for every 500 instances of cybercrime that take place in India, only 50 tend to get reported in India. And out of 50, only one tends to get registered as an FIR. I think those were conservative figures. The ground reality is far, far more bizarre. We come from a society where being a victim of cybercrime is still looked down upon. We come from a society where victims fear negative media publicity if they go ahead and report, and they're actually being stigmatized on the ground of reporting cybercrime. In addition, a lot of people actually believe that they are going to be harassed far more once they report a cybercrime because of the intrinsic inability of the police to deal with cybercrime matters. We are also beginning to see that in our country, getting cybercrime case registered is such a tall order. A majority of police officers may not want to register cybercrime because of the intrinsic global nature of this kind of cybercrime.
So I basically wrote to the bank saying that this is not my usage and I need the money back. And so they said, we're okay initiating that inquiry as long as you get a document from the police. And then we went there and they said that, okay, you need to write a written complaint. We'll give you a complaint number. We'll send it to the cyber cell and then they'll get back to you. And once they get back to you and we know what's happening, then you can lodge an FIR. And we realized that the complaint ID that they gave us will suffice as far as the bank is concerned. And as far as getting back to us is concerned, that really hasn't happened. So it hasn't gone to a step where we lodge an FIR.
We need to make reporting of cybercrimes extremely easy and in an efficient and a practical manner. We further need to encourage the law enforcement agencies to adopt user-friendly approaches while dealing with the issue of registration and investigations of cybercrimes.
The cybersecurity awareness has to come from school level, because now at school level everybody has a cell phone and all that stuff, right? So they should be aware that their identity could be stolen, they could be cyber stalked, their money can be stolen if they're actually doing banking on them, their private information, private pictures, private videos could be stolen. Now we are being told that even to have a phone connection you have to give Aadhaar card. If you want to do banking you have to give Aadhaar card.
You will have a unique fingerprint, you will have a unique retina scan, but then also it can be attacked easily. So by using money and by using a little bit of brain, you can have 2 Aadhaar cards also.